I go to Mayid, I go in Kvittel. This is Gemara in Kesubos, Daf Kuf Beis, the Daf 4, Hoshana Rabbah. And Mirta Hashem, the learning should bring an entire schos for the whole Chabura and the Piska Tava as our Gzar Din is sealed. And Mirta Hashem, hopefully for another year of incredible learning Torah together. And we pick it up from Kuf Aleph Amid Beis, the Gemara. We began the new parak yesterday with the Mishnah, this 12th and second to last parak of Kesubos. We have less than 2 weeks to go. Incredibly, I don't know, it does feel like we just started this. But let's get going. Says the Gemara, Itmar, Ha'imr l'chaveiro chayev ani l'cha mana. You jump into your friend and you tell him, I am obligated to you a mana. I owe you money. I owe you a mana. What is the status? Is such a proclamation, is such a statement that one makes to his friend, is that a binding statement lahalacha? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayiv, Rish Lakish Amar Potter. So it's a machlekes, good old fashioned. Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish, whether when I tell you I'm obligated to pay you $100, am I actually obligated? Rabbi Yochanan says yes, Rish Lakish says no. Hey, Chidam, says the Gemara, what are the parameters of this case? If he tells the people that are standing nearby, you are my witnesses that I am chayiv this guy $100, my time to Rish Lakish take a potter. Why do Rish Lakish say you're not chayiv? And he and if he did not say that you are my witnesses, my time to become a chayiv. So says the Gemara, I can't really understand which is the case. Whichever way you twist it, one of the shitas doesn't really work. So explains the Gemara, the case is he did not tell them you're my witnesses. What is the case? The case is that someone says to another person, I am obligated to you money in a shtar. Rav Yochanan Amar Chayiv. Why? Alima most of the shtar command daidami. Because a shtar is strong, is olim, as if I owe you money with witnesses. Just like if I told the people standing by, you're my witnesses, it would be binding. So too, having a shtar. Again, one second, not again, excuse me. Rish Lakish Amar Potter, lo alima most of the shtar. The shtar does not have such a strength. So that's a machlekes Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Now, let's look at Rashi for one moment. Rashi over here says, we gave over a shtar, and it says in it, Ani chayiv l'cha mana. This statement where we started today, the Itmar was not an Omar. It wasn't that he saw it to his friend, but rather it says in a shtar, I am obligated to you to amana. And even though it is the ksav yad, meaning it's my handwriting, and no one's debating whether it's my handwriting, says the Gemara. We're having highlighting issues. Apologies. Okay, let's just. Okay, let's continue. Because there's no chasima. So the case over here is that we have a ksav yad. It is my handwriting clearly that I owe you this money. But the question on the table is that nowhere there are no signatures on this statement. So that's the machlekes Rav Yochanan versus Reish Lakish. Whether handing over an unsigned shtar is comparable to saying atem eidai. Says the Gemara, 2 lines, the second to last line. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah. Hanoishe as the isha upaska imay lozen es bita chameshanim. I hope this sounds familiar. This is actually our Mishnah that we started yesterday. Hanoishe as isha, someone marries a woman and makes a condition that he's going to feed her daughter for 5 years. Chayav zen chameshanim. So my lav kayamna. Says the Gemara, is this not the case? Is the case that we're talking about of saying atamei dai? Okay, we are having officially issues. Oh, here we go. Baruch Hashem. Here we are. Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. So says the Gemara, is the case not one in which he said Not a Tamidai. One more time. The case of the Mishnah that he's obligated to pay the daughter for 5 years, is this not the case that he handed over to her a shtar that says, I am obligated to pay your daughter for 5 years? And then that is the scenario that we're saying he's indeed obligated. So says the Gemara, it's a raya to Rav Yechanan that handing over an unsigned shtar is the same thing as saying, Atem idai. Says the Gemara in the top of Kaf Beis and Aleph Loi, this is not a riot to Rav Yechanan. Bishtare psikta ukid Rav Gidol. Says the Gemara, this is not a riot to Rav Yechanan, but rather it's talking about a shtare psikta, which is a star of a posak, of allotment, literally, that your posak, that you designate, as the top Rashi points out, that the chassan and kala at their marriage, they say, I'm going to give such and such, and I'm going to give such and such, and that is the case, uchid Rav Gidol. And the case is like Rav Gidol Da'amar, Rav Gidol Amarav Kamal Tanoisin Lebincha Kach Lekach. At the wedding, one father says to the next, the father of the bride says, the father of the groom, the chassan to the kala, or actually the kala to the chassan fathers, how much are you going to give for your son? They Kach Lekach, listen now, Kamal Tanoisin Lebitcha, for your daughter Kach Lekach. Do they stand up, they kiss you, and they get married? Khan, who says that Rav Gidol, there is a kinyan, it's considered an acquisition, they are obligated to pay the amounts that they said. These are the entities that are kind of ba'amira, with mere saying, even though they did not actually sign this off in a document, but it's the mere words, that is enough to make them obligated. So says the Gemara, you thought that our Mishnah, which says that the husband told his wife, I'm going to support your daughter for 5 years, is a raya to Reb Yechanan, that when one says, I owe you money, he's indeed obligated. Says the Gemara, no, this is a unique entity, like Rav Gidol has taught us. This is a unique entity that at a marriage, these are the dvarim, the words that are kained, is a kinyan with words, even though perhaps usually it would not work, like Rish Lakish says, this case would work. Now just one Rashi, this top Rashi, as we highlighted already, Rashi says that the case is Edim Chaismin, Edus Gemura. Rashi seemingly says that this is a case of full-fledged edus, and if that would be the case, there would be no chiddush. And that's why Rashi continues and says, and if you're going to ask, what's the chiddush is, in a case, the leka kinyan ela divarim. And this is a point that's going to be elaborated on a bit more on Amud Beis. Tashima, says the Gemara 5 lines down, Kaf Beis and Aleph. Let's bring another proof to Rav Yechanan that when someone says to another, I am obligated to pay you, that statement is an obligation and he is chayiv. If someone writes to a kohen, I am obligated to you 5 slayim, which is the amount that you give for pidyon bachar, that when someone, pidyon haben in English, it's pidyon bachar, it's called the pidyon haben, that when someone is redeeming their firstborn son, so he says to the kohen, I owe you 5 slayim. What's the halacha? Chayiv litzel chayim slayim, he's indeed obligated. Ubenoi einoi padi, but his son is not redeemed through this payment. So we see from here a raya to Rav Yechanan, that again, that by saying to someone, I am obligated to give you 5 slayim, which we're assuming is the same case, like we've been talking about, Kasav Lekain, he writes and he hands over his Ksav Yad. It's true that it's not a full-fledged document, but he's giving his Ksav Yad, his own handwriting, that I owe you 5 slayim. It seemingly shows us that you're obligated. A clear raya to Rav Yechanan. Now, why is this child not public? Because we assume it's the old debt. So it's a raya to Rav Yechanan and Kasha to Rish Lakish. Answers the Gemara, Shaini Asam de Meshubed Lei Midaraisa. Says the Gemara, this is not a proof, because it's a Shiba Dearaisa when one is a firstborn son, and therefore you can't bring a proof to this to any other case, because this is a unique case of Pinyin Aben. He asks the Gemara, Yachi, if that is true, you're telling me, am I Kasav? So then why are you writing anything? If there's an obligation to pay the Kain 5 slayim, what's this unique din that you're writing to him that you're obligated? Explains the Gemara, the chiddush here is that you're being mavarer, you're choosing that he is the kayin that you're going to give the 5 slayim to. The Gemara now asks the question that I'm sure everyone is yelling at their screens about. I don't understand. If you're telling me this is a Chi of Deraisa, if you're telling me that he's choosing which kind to give it to, so why in practicality is the child not redeemed? Explains the Gemara, Kide'ula. Ta'amar ula dvar Torah padoi l'chshayitain. Midaraisa, when does the pidyon happen? The pidyon happens when the money is transferred, when I give over the cash. Next time you had a pidyon haben, when the actual money is given over, that is when the child is redeemed, and that is when the parents have full rights to the child. So therefore, why in this case is the child not redeemed? Because in this case, is there actual money transferring hands? The answer is no. There's a shtar. There's a document that I owe you money transferring hands. And because there's something funny going on over here, it doesn't look like a regular opinion of that money is transferred. Therefore, a gzeira that one might think you could redeem a child with a shtar. So because of that, in this case, the child is not redeemed. But is this a raya to Rav Yochanan? The answer is no. Amar Rava, says Rava Kitanoi. Suggests the Gemara perhaps the machlokes Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish when someone says I owe you money, and whether indeed those words are binding is a machlokes Tanoim. As we learned, if we have a guarantor, we have, as Rashi points out, under the signature of Eidim, it says, I am a guarantor. There's a star that says Reuven or Shimon $100, and on the bottom I write my name and I sign that I guarantee this loan. What is the halacha? When I have to pay? Is my signature enough that I become an Ariv, a guarantor? Says the Brisa, Koive Minachasim b'nei Chayrin. The halacha is you could collect from the guarantors, from my Nechasim b'nei Chayrin, the properties that I have. What's the reason we think right now? Because since the shtar was in front of Eidim, it's considered that I admitted I owed you, that I'm the Ariv, and therefore I have to pay. There's a story that came in front of Rabbi Yishmael, and that's indeed what he said. Omar loy ben Nanis. So that, first of all, obviously seems like the opinion of Rav Yochanan. Says ben Nanis, no. Says ben Nanis, you do not collect at all. Amar loy, lama. What's the reason, ben Nanis? Why can you not collect? Amar loy, if someone is choking, explains ben Nanis, if someone is strangling, choking his friend in the shuk, umatzai, and one day you're walking down the street and you see Reuven choking Shimon, saying, Shimon, you have to pay up your debt, you owe me $1 million. Umatzai chaveira, and you're walking by and you see this transpiring, Reuven choking Shimon. So you say to Reuven, V'amar loy, hanach loy, leave him alone. V'anine etin l'cha. Reuven, please leave him alone, and I am going to pay you. I'm going to pay up Shimon's debt. I'm going to give you the $1 million. What's the halacha? Potter. You do not have to pay up the debt. Why? Shaloi al amunasai helvahu. Because it was not based on the trust that the loan was created. From here we see a yesod, we see a rule, that because when did this guarantee happen? After the halva. There was no actual transaction happening. I just saw Reuven choking Shimon. So because I guaranteed it after the loan already happened, there's no validity to that guarantee. Similarly, if the Ariv, if we see a signature that is there, la'achar chitum shtaros, after the shtar is signed, as well, it's not going to have any validity. So it suggests the Gemara, lema Rav Yochanan. Should we say that Rav Yochanan is Damar Rav Yishmael? Rav Yochanan says, like Rabbi Yishmael, that Rabbi Yochanan says, very Shlakish Damar Keben Nanis. Rabbi Yochanan says, like Rabbi Yishmael, the first opinion, like we explained, Rabbi Yochanan says that you're chayiv, like Rabbi Yishmael learned, that you could be goyve from B'nechas B'nei Chayrin. And Reish Lakish that says that admitting to your friend is not chayiv, is saying like Ben Nanis. So the Gemara wants to suggest the machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish is the previous machlekes Tanoim of Rabbi Yishmael and Ben Nanis. Answers the Gemara, no. Ali with the Ben Nanis kuli amalei pligi. everyone could indeed agree with Benanis that in the case of Ariv Ayotzach or Chitim Shtarais, maybe in that case there indeed would not be an obligation. Ki pligi. What's the machlekes? I'll leave it to Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yishmael, very good. Reish Lakish, Adkan Lokam Reish Lakish Asam. Oh, Adkan Lokam Rabbi Yishmael Asam, excuse me. El de Shaykh Leila Shibuda de Araisa. When did Rabbi Yishmael? Reish Lakish comes along. Reish Lakish says, you want to bring me a proof from this case? This is not a raya. Why not? Says Reish Lakish, the Rabbi Yishmael only said his din in the case of an Ariv, because that has to do with a din da Araisa. Whereas, because over there it's in a shtar, it's in a document, therefore there is biblical applications. As Rashi in the third line points out, Ariv is shibuda de araisa, and maybe that's why Rabbi Yishmael holds there's an obligation. But says Reish Lakish, it does not necessarily prove to our case of a regular verbal admission, and therefore the machlekes Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish is not necessarily the machlekes Rabbi Yishmael ben Nanis. Gufa says the Gemara 5 lines down, Kuf Beis and Mid Beis. Let's get back to our original discussion on the top of Amar Aleph. Omar Rav Gidel Amar Rav, come out to noise the middle kach lekach, come out to noise the bitl kach lekach. Amde v'kitshu kanei netvar meniknim ba'amira. The two fathers at the chassan and the kala's parents each obligate themselves to certain amounts of money. They make the kedushin, and these are items that are kaina with mir amira. Omar Rava Mistavra Milsa de Rav Bitoy Nairo. Says Rava, this din of Rav Gidol Amar Rav is mistaver. It is logical by one's daughter, who is a Naira between the age of 12 and 12 and a half. Why? Because the father gets benefit from this kedushin. Why? As Rashi points out in the last wide line, because the money of the kedushin goes to the father. Aval by Garas, once the girl becomes 12 and a half years old, the father does not get anything. The father does not get the kesef kedushin. Loi, then these words should not be a kinyan. But says Rava, that's what I would have assumed, misvara. But says Rava, I make a shvua ma'arav afilu b'garis. This statement of Rav Gidol Marav, really, even though logically I would assume it's only by a naira. But says Rava, in reality it applies even to a b'garis. Why? If you're not going to agree to me, the father of the child, in the case of Binyan Aben, what benefit comes to him? And yet we see that there is an obligation by his words. Ella, so what's the reason there's an obligation? Excuse me. I said that incorrectly. Avia Ben is not going back and Binyan Ben. Totally wrong. I'm sorry. Avia Ben, the father of the chassan, meaning the father of the kala, you're right. When it's a naira, he accepts the money of the kedushin. When it's a b'garis, he does not. But says the Gemara, 1 second, the father of the chassan doesn't get anything after the kedushin. So what's the reason why the words are kaina? What's the reason? Because the benefit that they did a shidduch together, the joy that he has that his child got married, gamri umakni la'adadi, therefore he makes a kinyan. And therefore it's going to be the same thing in our case, and therefore says Rava, the din of Rav Gidol Amar Rav is not only by a naira, but is even by a b'garis. Omar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina finds Ravashi and he says, I don't understand this din of Rav Gidol Amar Rav. Excuse me, not that I don't understand. Ask the Gemara. Is the statement of Rav Gidol Amar Rav? Rav Gidol Amar Rav said the chassan and the kala's parents that the chasana obligate themselves certain amounts of monies. Is this an entity that could be written down or not? And of course, everyone's thinking about the top Rashi and Amar Aleph that we pointed out. Rashi says that there could be that you write it down, then it's Edus Gemura. But that is the Shaila of Ravina to Rav Ashi. Are you allowed to write down how much each side obligates themselves? And the obvious ramification is going to be, as Rashi points out, are you going to be able to collect from the Chasim Mishubadim encumbered properties or not? So Amar later Rav Ashi answered, Lo Ninili Kasif. No, you don't write it down. So Eisvei asks the Gemara about 16 lines down. The first word line is Loi. Eisvei asks Ravina to Ravashi. So Ravashi responded, you don't write it back. Retorts Ravina. Then the Varmishta said that the smart ones would write, I'm only supporting your daughter as long as you're staying with me. So my Kaisvin, excuse me. So what's the raya? So we see that they would write it down. They would kaisvin. So how are you telling me that this entity, this obligation between the sides is not something to be written down, Ravashi? We see in the Mishnah clearly they wrote it down. Explains the Gemara, my kaisvin, aimrin. The Mishnah didn't really mean kaisvin, it meant that they would say it. V'kar leila amira ksiva. And it just called, excuse me, v'kar leila amira ksiva. Ask the Gemara, is that a normal thing to call saying, writing down in? Yes, it's normal. V'hatanan. This is a raya. That if someone says to his wife, I have nothing to do with your estate, Rav explains that this is indeed something that he says to his wife and not really eksivas. We have a raya that when the Braisa or a Mishnah could say Amira, it could really be referring to ksiva. Tashema, the Gemara asks another kasha. You only write a star of Irisin, a star of Nisuin, with the knowledge, with the das of both the husband and wife. The obvious implication is if they both agree, then the husband and wife both agree to write it down. He can write it down. So my lav shtari psikta. Is this not referring to the agreement between the both parties? And we have a raya that you could, yes, write it down. A kasha to Ravashi that said you should not write down the shtari psikta. Answers Gemara loy shtari erisin. Says the Gemara, this is not talking about shtari psikta. This is not talking about the monetary obligations that each side is obligating themselves, but rather this is talking about lo shtari erisin mamish. This is talking about a good old fashioned document stating that they did erisin. Kid Rav Papa of Rav Shravia, as Rav Papa and Rav Shravia taught us the Itmar, as we learned in the Raisa. Cause foolish mavishloy midaita. If there's a document that's written with intent, lishma v'shaloy midaita, but now with their intent, Rabba v'Ravina Amri mikudashes. The document still works. They're two married. Rabba v'Rav Shravia Amei enoi mikudashes. So the Brisa that's teaching me that you have to write the story Erisin Nesuin midas shneim. That's Rav Papa of Rav Shavia that's saying that Shtar Erisin has a din of das, that both the husband and the wife have to be knowledgeable of that which is written. So Tashema, we conclude with a third and final kasha on Rav Ashi. Meisu, but I say we learned in the Mishnah that if the husbands die, then their daughters are supported from the Chasim and Chayrin, and this daughter that they obligated to feed for 5 years is fed from the Chasim Mishubadim. Why? Because she is like a Baal Aschayv, it's considered as if that she has a debt against them. So says the Gemara, from the clear fact that we see that the daughter gets the Chasim Mishubadim, that's a clear raya that can be written down. Answers the Gemara in a raya, they made a kinyan. Iachi asked the Gemara, B'nais Nami. The daughters should have the same, so why is it only this stepdaughter? All the kids should be able to collect from the Chas Mishubatim. Explains the Gemara, B'shekana Lazuv, L'kana Lazuv, you only made a kinyan for one. Oh my, Paska, the classical kasha, how do you know that what you just said is true? So explains the Gemara, what's the logic? This daughter, Davi B'shas kinyan, she was there. Mahani La kinyan, it works. B'anais, the rest of the kids, Davi B'shas kinyan, Lai Mahani Lu kinyan. Mi lo yaskinon, says the Gemara. Mi lo yaskinon davia b'shas kinyan. I don't understand. Are we not discussing a case that they're actually there at the time of the kinyan? Ve'echidami, what's the case? Kon the garsha v'hadra. They got divorced and then they remarried. But at the time of the remarriage, all the kids were already around. So the kinyan of both of the kids should be from the Chasim Mishubadim. Explains the Gemara, you're right. Elihi, this stepdaughter, the less of it Tanai Bezdin, Kinyan. Since she's not part of the Tanai Bezdin, it's a new din to feed her for these 5 years. Therefore, the Kinyan helps, and therefore she's going to get from the Chas Mishubadim. Whereas Banais, the rest of the kids, the Isyahu, but Tanai Bezdin, there's a Tanai Bezdin that the Kesubos says you have to feed all the Yisayim, like Mahani Lu Kinyan. Migra Gari. No Mahani Lu Kinyan. Ask the Gemara, 1 second, I don't understand. Migra Gari, it comes out that the kids who are part of the Tanai Bezdin are getting even less. It's counterintuitive. I don't understand. This stepdaughter who shouldn't have gotten anything because I obligated myself to pay her for 5 years, so to come out that she's now going to get from the Chas Mishubadim, whereas the regular Yisayim, because they're in Tanai Bezdin, are not going to get from the Chas Mishubadim. Ella, new answer. Benoisav I time akiv this night with Tanai Bezdin. Amos Rari Atafse. Says the Gemara, you know why? Even though it might be counterintuitive, but the truth is, when it comes to Yisayimim, since Kivin Desnai over Tanai Bezdin, Amar Srei Atafse, there's always the concern that they might have already paid them, the father might have already paid them, and that's the reason why we don't let them to collect from the Chas Mishubadim, whereas the stepdaughter not. We'll pick up from the Lo Yama Arisha in the next year.